I don't know about you, but I am beginning to experience the atmosphere surrounding queer pride as incredibly off-putting. Like, sure, I get it. Pride is an opportunity for queer people to celebrate and embrace all of their beautiful, unique qualities, and that's great. But over the past few years, I've started to notice that the shadow side of pride is becoming more and more predominant within the queer movement. And if I'm being totally honest, to me, the whole thing is just starting to feel like really gross. It feels superficial, feels combative, feels preachy, and in general, it feels like we've got a sort of like groupthink / hive mind hypnosis thing happening within our community. So can we talk about this? Can we talk about how and why pride just isn't cutting it anymore? And why it's actually probably doing us more harm than good at this point? Because really, that's where my mind goes whenever I observe mainstream queer culture. It's like, I look at these people that I love and care for and who I truly want to thrive and be happy, but I'm noticing how they're going about their process. And then I can't help but say to myself, ooh, I think you might be perpetuating your own suffering over there. And I think you might be using pride as a tool of destruction in order to enact your will upon the world. But just to be clear, I'm speaking about this topic not because I'm trying to create a drama, and I don't want to tear down our community. That's not what this is about. But instead, I'm just saying, like, hey, is it possible that we can use the lens of constructive criticism in order to round out and diversify the collective queer consensus? Because at the end of the day, I think that that's a quality that's really important to queer people, right? The diversity. It's like we represent diversity of thought, diversity of love, and really it's just like a diverse approach to this project of life. At least, like, that's what I would assume is something that is really important to us based on how we are marketing our values to the world. But at the same time, it's also kind of ironic that when it comes to diversity, and we consider that within our own community, well, that's kind of a different story, right? It's like we pretty much all think the same and we have the same demands and we've got this same victim narrative, and we're, for the most part, like really self-inflated and angry at the world and rooted in divisiveness. And then underneath all that, we're also like deeply hurting and profoundly wounded and secretly insecure. But hey, you know, we also have this so-called pride thing to distract us from our pain, right? So I guess that's something. And that, obviously, I know it's not all of us who act like this and think like this. And so, yes, I am making generalizations in order to make a point. But at the same time, I can't help but feel like overall, our community is trending towards greater delusion, hatred, and confusion. Or at least when we consider like this outward-facing social justice / political activism arm of our movement, we are. And so it's kind of like we've got this incestuous dystopian narrative playing on repeat, saying, oh, it's us versus them, and we're all under attack, and it's all their fault, and look what they've done to us, and it's time to dismantle society, and the queer people are actually smarter and better than everyone else, and, you know, pride, and look at how, you know, progressive and trendy and woke I am. So, I mean, really, it's no wonder why people outside of our community are labeling the pride movement as propaganda, right? I mean, to be real, like, that's pretty much exactly what it feels like. At least on an energetic level, it does, in my opinion. You know, it just feels manipulative, and it feels divisive, and feels combative. And when I hear queer people preaching about pride but they're doing it while standing on this pedestal of self-righteousness. Well, like I said, the whole thing just rubs me the wrong way. And the whole situation actually reminds me of that saying, which goes something along the lines of, the solution has to come from a higher level of consciousness than the problem does. And so I actually think that that's like the perfect way of summarizing why pride doesn't work. Because pride, as it's currently being interpreted and perpetuated, is actually operating at the exact same level of consciousness as the problem is. But the only difference here is that this is just like the inverse or the reciprocal of everything that we're supposed to be fighting against. So now instead of like people not accepting us, well, now we just don't accept them. And now instead of us feeling insecure, we flipped it around and now we just feel pride. And instead of us being marginalized, now, like you're the one who's marginalized. And so for the most part, when it comes to this overarching mentality of our community, well, I feel like all that we're really doing is perpetuating the same root level divisiveness that we are supposed to be fighting against. But in this case, like, instead of calling it bigotry, we've just rebranded it and we're calling it pride. And so as a community, we're like so busy flaunting our fabulousness and bashing our opposition that we've really failed to realize that the real problem isn't actually out there, but instead it's in here. And it's like we've conveniently forgotten that it's literally impossible to restore balance and peace in the world when we don't have balance and peace within ourselves. I mean, like, how could it be any other way? How could we possibly have a healing influence on the world while we are so busy operating within a fractured state of being? And even more ironic, okay, so how could we possibly advocate for acceptance of the authentic self, aka pride, when we can't even extend those same privileges to the people outside of our own community? So, yeah, in a gist, this is why, in my opinion, pride in the conventional sense simply is not working. Because, like I said, pride is nothing more than the original problem, but we've just flipped it inside out. And now instead of us being on the outside looking in, now we're the ones on the inside looking out. And so it's like nothing fundamental at all has changed. All we did was switch roles with the oppressor and exchange one false narrative for another. But just to be clear, honoring your individual beauty, cultivating your unique qualities, embracing everything that is naturally you, well, yeah, this is obviously a healthy and necessary part of the queer journey. So please don't get me wrong, because I am in full support of a heart-centered celebration of the authentic self. But as far as I can tell, that's like not really what's happening within the mainstream pride movement. And so in my opinion, that's why pride in the conventional sense has run its course. It's gotten us here, so we can be grateful for that. It's gotten us to a point where, like, we've got exposure, we've got a platform, our community's activated, and all of that is great. So I think that the way that I see it, it's just like, okay, now the time has come for us to redefine our values. Let's take accountability. Let's start practicing what we preach. Let's heal from the inside out. Let's forgive the world. And ultimately, let's become a living embodiment of truth, compassion, and peace. Because at the end of the day, having pride in the person who you think you are is actually totally irrelevant to the reality of who or what you actually are. And not only that, but believing good things about the imagined sense of self really is virtually no different than believing bad things about the imagined sense of self. Because these are just beliefs, right? One feels good and the other feels bad, but both are standing in the way of the truth of your being. And if you want to learn more about using your queer nature as a vehicle for realizing your true nature, then you should watch this video and I'll tell you about just that. All right, my friends, that's all I've got. I'll see you in the next one.